Hey, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for today. This week, I'm looking at some stories out of the life of King David. Now, David is someone everybody knows. Even if you don't know the Bible, you've heard of David and Goliath. But I want to look at some lessons that have been reinforced to me as I've been studying his life lately. I'm not doing them in chronological order. I'm doing them in a different order. Kind of a bit random, pell-mell order, if you might. So this first story I want to do comes out, is fresh in my mind at least, from an interview I did with this young lady named Ellie. She is at Baylor University. She's, I think, a junior at this point in time, and she's taking a class in interviewing. And in that class, one of the things they had to do is interview someone else. So she was interviewing me. And in the process of that interview, the story came up from David's life that's told in 1 Chronicles chapter 17. There's a similar situation told, but not as fully in 2 Samuel. But anyway, in this story, you've got David. Now at this point he's king. And he's not only king, but he's moved his capital city to Jerusalem, which for the first time the Israelites were able to get. He had defeated the Jebusites there, made it his capital city. He's built it out. He's built him a palace. But at the time, the Ark of the Covenant, that throne of sorts of God, was just still in a tent like it had been basically since the time Moses had it built. And so David decided, hey, I've got this great house of cedar. God has done so much for me. How dare I live in a palace while God's throne is under a tent? I'm going to build a temple. I'm going to build a house for God. And so David calls in Nathan the prophet and he says, look, I dwell in a house of cedar. That was a big deal then. But the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord's under a tent. So I'm going to build a palace. And Nathan says, do what you're thinking. Follow your heart. And that night, though, the word of the Lord comes to Nathan and says, go back to David and tell him, no, you're not going to build me a house that I would dwell in. And instead, that'll be done by your son. But, God says, I will build you a house, David. Now think about that for a moment. David says, I want to build a house for God. God's been so good to me. And God's reply is, no, that's not the task I have in front of you. But hey, David, instead of you building me a house, I'm going to build you one. And I'm not talking about a palace. I'm talking about a kingdom. One that will pass to your son and your son's sons, and one that ultimately will become an eternal kingdom of David. This reminds and reinforces me of a very simple fact. You cannot outgive God. You don't have the resources, you don't have the heart, and you don't have the knowledge. Paul said it this way to the Ephesians. He said that God is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think. And the irony in this story with the wordplay is a pristine example. David's built himself a marvelous palace. He wants to build one for the Lord. The Lord says, no, but I'm going to build you one even beyond the edifice that you're thinking in your brain. It's interesting, this story is told through the voice of Nathan, whose name in Hebrew, Natan, means gift. So God uses the gift prophet to tell David that God is going to gift David, not just the kingdom, but an eternal reign of sorts. This is the way of God. So we should rightly seek to give him, with our life, our resources, our talents, our time, all that we can. But know in the process, if we do it with the right attitude, God's always going to find a way to give back to us in the abundance that only he has. We don't give to get, but when we give in the right heart, we do get. It's part of the wonderment of God. It's why I've made this your video thought for the day. Have a great day. More on David tomorrow.